All right, let's move along away from the horrors of Bee Ranch. And I'm actually going to have to move kind of fast. I'm going to speed this up just because there's so much land to cover. It's actually kind of disturbing how much of Point Reyes National Seashore is dedicated to ranching. And we just have to get past all of these poop ponds, as they are affectionately called, dissolving cow shit so it can be sprayed on the land, as if the cows weren't shitting on the land enough as it is. All right, let's speed things up. Get across all of what once was habitat. Note that fork in the road. We're going to reference that again in a little bit. All right, zooming in on Sea Ranch, Spilletta Ranch, and let's see, tucked away in the back here. Yep, sure enough, we got all those baby prisons. Isn't dairy just the most charming? Hashtag historic. The Spillettas, by the way, Sea Ranch, have been adamant and open about wanting to get rid of the elk over the years, so don't let them try and change their tune. It's all documented. Anyway, this is where you can see elephant seals, and along this road is where D Ranch once was, but I want to take you over to look at E Ranch really quick. Oh, E Ranch. Another one of those stewards of the land with, this time, a landfill that can be seen from space, an illegal landfill. Stewards of the land. Yep, it's real. This is what it looks like in life. One of our allies went out there and took photos of it. And I got to tell you, we spent most of our time and energy looking at this landfill. And now that I'm taking another look at E Ranch, the rest of it isn't exactly very nice. It took a landfill to distract us from how bad the rest of the ranch is. And you know what? You know what the owners of this ranch said when they got busted? Not by the Park Service, but by citizens. They said environmentalists are throwing anything at the wall to see what will stick. No apology. No, hey, we can be better. Hey, let us make it up to you and prove that we really are one with nature, and we really do have a relationship with the land here. And when you look at this, when you look at how they used land to dump their junk, I gotta think about how these ranchers also complain about elk eating a little bit of grass. As if that is the difference between their business making it or not. What do you think about maybe planting some grass where you built a dump? If your grass is that precious, maybe you could use your dump land to grow some grass for your cattle. Of course, what ranch is complete without a poop pond? There it is. Maybe it's a stock pond, but are they really that different since cattle shit in their own water supply? It's not even so much that they do that. The bigger point is that this is a pond that is man-made, human-made, specifically for commodity animals, which means to simply call it a pond would be inaccurate, because that would indicate that it serves purposes for other creatures, when in fact ranchers don't want wildlife benefiting from these stock ponds. They're there to water their commodities. That's it. Going so far as to complain in writing to the Park Service about wildlife drinking out of their stock ponds. And those of you who support ranching are saying, oh, well, you can't blame them. It's a business. You gotta defend your business. Well, you don't get to turn around and pretend that ranching in nature is a marriage that works well. It's not. You don't get to keep telling these lies about these wonderful, earth-loving ranch people while also defending their tendency to be anti-planet, to be anti-nature, to be anti-wildlife. Let's take another look at E Ranch, because we have some more photos thanks to Jocelyn Knight. Like I said before, we were so distracted with that dump, we didn't even spend time looking at this. I mean, Does this look like stewardship of the land? Does this look like a marriage with nature, a working relationship with nature? This isn't even the dump. Something worth noting is that the Nunes family operating this ranch also operate a ranch, the first horror show that we looked at in the previous tour video. One reason this is worth mentioning is to combat this idea that these are small, struggling family farms. The reality is that they're people who can afford leases in multiple locations. And it doesn't stop here. They're also operating outside of the seashore. Now, this isn't the only example. In fact, I don't even have to leave the neighboring area. C Ranch and E Ranch both were allowed to lease the land of D Ranch after the occupants of D Ranch left. That's not just pertinent when pointing out that they operate multiple leases within the seashore. It also matters because Bay Nature has made a big deal recently of what has happened to poor D Ranch after ranchers left. Well, the reality is you're not really looking at a ranch that was abandoned. You're looking at housing that hasn't been upkept, but a lot of the land continued to be abused by cattle grazing. But as long as I'm talking about dilapidated buildings, and Bay Nature Magazine made sure to talk about the dilapidated buildings of D Ranch, this is probably a good time in the video to point out that as bad as the buildings at an abandoned ranch look, they look the same as Mendoza Ranch, which has not been abandoned. So, Bay Nature Magazine, if you're going to try and make a point about the condition of buildings, you should probably do some investigative work into why the buildings of non-abandoned ranches look this bad. Hint, it's because of the shitty lease violating squatters stealing taxpayer dollars. The condition of the buildings is one thing, but Bay Nature Magazine also talked about the condition of plants. Once again, acting as if something unheard of is happening due to the absence of the ranchers. I've already talked about this a little bit in a previous video, which I will link below, but we'll talk about the plants more in the next video. I want to end this one by reading a quote from the photographer whose photos I used in this video. Quote, "If the Park Service knew about it and did nothing, that's negligent. If the park didn't know about it and they're not aware of what the ranchers are doing, that's negligent." No lies there. I talked about the negligence of the Park Service previously because when the elk were dying and all the ponds were dried up and the seeps were dried up, they would respond to public concern by letting everyone know everything's fine. We've got an eye on everything. We're closely monitoring the situation. And the reality is you don't see them out there. And if they are out there, once again, Park Service, you don't win. Because how do you miss this? I mean, the article says that satellite images date back 18 years. 18 years for the Park Service to somehow discover something that can be seen from space. Some of the metal that has been decaying into the soil dates back 10 years. There's just no way to let the Park Service off the hook regarding this stuff. Which brings us back to the statements from people like Kevin Lunny, like pretending that they're leaving because they're just fed up with dealing with things. When these people say they're fed up with dealing with things, they're fed up with having their way 100% of the time to the point that they behave like spoiled brat children, and it takes birders, nature enthusiasts, hikers to finally say, hey, what in the hell's this? Otherwise, they would get away with everything because Point Reyes National Seashores Park Service is controlled by these ranchers. They've never done anything of their own will that wasn't first prompted by the public saying, hey, this is wrong. That would have been a great place to end the video, but I also just want to express that as bad as this dump is with all the cars that have piled up over 18 years, how far away is it from a ranch, which already looks like cars are piling up? This looks like a junkyard. That's an operating ranch. This isn't even hidden from view. Every single time you go to Chimney Rock or the lighthouse, this is in plain sight. They just don't have any concept of being better or being respectful or stewardship of the land, which they are simultaneously crowned as being stewards of the land. As you continue to watch this series, just ask yourselves if what you're seeing makes you think, oh yeah, these are stewards of the land.